Do certain members of your family make you want to scream? Do you get so annoyed with family members that you want to tear out your last remaining bits of hair? Then you need a dose of setting healthy boundaries with family. Want to know more? Settle in and let's talk about mental health. Hello and welcome, I'm Jeremy Godwin, and this week I'm talking about setting healthy boundaries with family. Does your family make The Simpsons look like the Brady Bunch? Do you have challenges with certain family members who, they might get into your business or they're just not considerate towards you at all? This video is full of practical ways that you can set and maintain healthy boundaries with your family. So these things will take time, effort, and perseverance, but by putting these into place on a regular basis, you will see a massive difference over time in terms of your relationships and how you approach them. So the thing is that sometimes the people that we're closest to, especially family members, they're the hardest for us to maintain healthy boundaries with. And part of the reason why is that we have these emotional ties and we have all of these relationships that go right back to childhood, and we very often can find ourselves falling back into the same kind of roles whenever we're around them. So this is very much about being able to understand what's going on and then put in place boundaries that are going to actually make the relationship a lot more positive. I was trying to think how to say that there, but I think that's probably the best way to say it. So just to quickly explain what I mean by boundaries before we go any further, we use the term boundaries to describe what you will or won't allow in your life. And as I've said in past episodes, we only really have any direct control over what we do, say, and feel. And when it comes to other people, all we can really control is how we choose to respond to the way that they act towards us. And so when we talk about family, that's where it can get really tough, especially because of those bonds that I was talking about earlier. And often you find that it's really difficult to address stuff with them, or you try to and you feel really uncomfortable, or they just won't listen to the message, whatever it might be. It's difficult, especially when you're an adult, feeling that you are not being seen as a person or that you're being told how to live your life. Look, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I have a really challenging relationship with my mother that I've talked about in previous episodes. And, sometimes with extended families, it can be a challenging thing sometimes. So it really is about learning from your experiences. And I've done pretty much everything to do that I'm actually going to be talking about today. So the advice that I give you here, not only is it practical, but it's also based on my personal experiences as well as my actual knowledge around psychology. So I have 8 points today, and let's begin with: be clear about your mindset towards family. So we wouldn't let most strangers or acquaintances just walk all over us and treat us like a doormat. So why do we sometimes do it with family? We do it because we have this mindset that family is different somehow. The thing that I want to start with today is that just because somebody is related to you, that doesn't give them the right to treat you like crap. So if that's something that's happening to you, it's important to really think about your attitude towards that. And you know what? Don't put up with crap is pretty much what I'm trying to say here in a nice way. I don't care if somebody's related to you or not. That does not give them a license to treat you with disrespect. So my second point is, give yourself permission to make choices that are right for you. So this is an extension of the previous point, because sometimes with family, we let them get away with things that we would not with anybody else. You need to give yourself permission to make the choices that are right for you and live your life in the way that is right for you. You are who you are. You are a completely unique individual with unique preferences and thoughts and values and beliefs. And my thing on this is that if you are somebody who does no harm, is kind, and who gives more than they take, I really don't care what you do in your personal life. It's got nothing to do with me. So realistically, give yourself permission to do the things that are right for you. I keep saying it over and over again because I kind of feel like I've just made the point, but I'm just going to say it one more time for the back row. Please, honestly, don't put somebody else's needs in front of your own. Give yourself permission to make the choices that are absolutely right for you. Point number 3 is be clear with yourself about what your needs are. All relationships are two-way streets in the sense that there is give and there is take. And that means that you have needs and the other person has needs. I think it's important to understand absolutely what your other family members' needs are, but I want you to also think about becoming really clear on what your needs are. Sometimes we put our needs on the back seat or on the back burner because we're so worried about upsetting or offending our family member. And it's really important that you know what you need out of the relationship and you ask for it. And if you don't get it, then that's something that needs to be addressed. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Number 4, communicate your needs in a calm and objective way. With family, emotions very often tend to run high, and we have a wealth of history that we can very often tend to throw at one another or that causes resentment and all of those things. When you communicate with somebody in whatever environment, it doesn't matter if they're related to you or not, the only way to have effective communication is to be focused on a calm, objective, and rational conversation. If you don't feel equipped to have that discussion at the time, walk away, work through it, and come back to it when you are in a calmer place. But you will not get anywhere by getting into an argument with a family member, point blank. Tip number 5, say no when you need to say no. So I talked about saying no in a previous episode of Let's Talk About Mental Health TV, and I'll link to that down in the description below. And the thing with saying no is that it can be really awkward and uncomfortable, but sometimes we have to say no. You only have so many hours in the day, so many things that you can give your 100% energy and attention to. And there's also the little matter of one of the earlier points that I made, which is actually your needs. And sometimes the requests that might be made of you go completely against what your needs are or don't take your needs into account. And so you need to be able to learn how to say no and be willing to say no if and when you need to. You may also find episode 45 of the podcast, Let's Talk About Assertiveness, to be helpful here. Tip number 6, plan for triggers. So this is kind of an extension of what I was talking about before, but I'm going to be really specific here. 2 wrongs don't make a right. And so if you're getting into an argument with somebody, if they're screaming at you or if they're judging you or just being nasty, joining them in that party is not going to make things better. There's an old saying that you don't fight fire with fire. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, if there were 2 different fires put together, it would multiply and make a larger one. Screaming matches don't work. Nasty comments don't work. All they do is they make things worse. When you combine negativity with negativity, you just get more negativity. They don't cancel one another out. They multiply. So really think about conversations that you may have with certain people where you can easily feel triggered and make the decision in advance about how you're going to deal with that if and when you feel triggered. Have an escape plan. Whether if you're on the phone, do whatever you need to do to get off the phone. If you're seeing the person in person, have another plan in place so that if you need to leave, you can excuse yourself. Whatever you need to do. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having a backup plan if you're dealing with somebody who is potentially going to trigger you. I went through this for many, many years with my mother, and the only way that I was able to keep a civil tongue probably 80% of the time, because I wasn't perfect with it all the time, but the majority of the time I could only do that by being prepared for those triggers and getting myself out of that situation as soon as I could see that it was going down that path. So do what you need to do. And this is a little bit about self-preservation, but it's also about recognizing that if you go down that path, it's going to create really awkward and uncomfortable situations and heated arguments, which are not beneficial. All things need to be approached calm, rationally, and in a less emotional way. Tip number 7. Call out breaches and initiate consequences. There is no point setting a boundary if you're not actually going to stick to it. So when you want to think about boundaries with family, you think about what you will accept and what you won't accept. Communicate that clearly in a calm, objective, and rational way. And then What you need to do is monitor the situation, and if it continues, address it if and when it happens again. So the conversation may go something like, hey, we had a conversation 2 weeks ago where I asked you not to call me after 6 p.m. However, you're still calling me at 9 p.m. I can't be taking calls at that time of night because I have to get up at 5 a.m. the next morning for work. I need that to stop, and we discussed that 2 weeks ago. If that happens again after you've addressed it and called out the fact that it has already occurred, then you need to address the fact that it's still happening. So for example, that conversation might go like this. Hey, we've had a couple of conversations now about not calling me after 6 p.m. And in fact, last week I said to you that I absolutely need that to stop. And again, you're calling me at 9 p.m. I don't quite understand what's happening here, and I need it to stop. Non-negotiable. So the other piece here is that if that continues beyond that point, that's where you need to actually initiate consequences. So there's no point having boundaries and saying that you're going to address it if it continues happening, if you're not prepared to put your money where your mouth is. So if the person keeps on breaching your boundaries, then that's where you might need to take some time out. You might need to block them on your phone, whatever works in terms of initiating the consequences. There's lots of different examples, so it's hard for me to be specific here. But you can check out episode 53 of the Let's Talk About Mental Health podcast, Let's Talk About Boundaries, for more examples and more specific information. And so that brings me to my 8th and final point. Sometimes you might need to have a break from someone. And so that means either having a short break for a period of time and letting them know that if you feel comfortable to do so, letting them know that it's because of whatever situation or whatever boundary is being breached. Maybe it's just taking a break without talking about it if that's what you're more comfortable with. Or for a really toxic relationship, perhaps that is distancing yourself for a long period of time or even permanently. Look, sometimes you need to love people from a distance, and that's okay. You need to make sure that your mental health and well-being are taken care of first and foremost. And if a toxic relationship is having a damaging effect on your well-being, then something has to give. Don't put yourself in an environment where you are potentially going to have harm done to you on a regular basis, either emotionally or whatever, because of giving that person multiple chances to hurt you. Walk away if you need to. And just because somebody is related to you by blood, that does not give them permission to treat you like crap. Exactly what I said at the beginning of the episode. So that's it for this week. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Catch the Let's Talk About Mental Health podcast every Sunday for a deeper look at how to improve your mental health. And watch this video next for advice on how to say no for better mental health. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care and talk to you next time.